Hello and welcome to our webcast. Moss Adams is pleased that you joined us for today's webcast, Fundraising and Development Strategies for Boards. Before we begin, I'm going to play a brief video.
Welcome and thanks for joining us. Moss Adams webcasts are designed to help elevate your business performance. Transform your future for the better with advisory solutions tailored to your vision and supported by our collective technical resources. Our presentation will start in a few moments. Before we begin, here are a few things to keep in mind. You can customize how you both view our presentation and interact with the presenter. For better viewing, close all other applications and turn up your speaker volume. You can also adjust window size and placement or enter full screen mode using the controls at the top of the window or dragging the bottom right-hand corner to resize. At the bottom of your screen, you'll see a series of icons, each relating to a different aspect of our session. You can download the group attendance sheet and a PDF copy of today's slides from the slide deck and handouts widget. You can ask our presenter questions during the webcast by typing a question in the Q&A window and clicking Submit. We'll do our best to answer all questions during the presentation or follow up via email. If you experience technical difficulty during today's presentation, refresh your browser by hitting the F5 key. Today's session will offer you 1 CPE credit. To receive credit, you must meet the requirements as specified by the National Association of State Boards of Accountancy. You must attend at least 50 minutes of the session and respond to at least 75% or 3 of the 4 polling questions, which we'll ask throughout today's presentation. Polling questions will appear within the slide window. To participate in the polls, please click on your answer and be sure to hit the Submit button to record your response. We'll track your progress and alert you when you've earned CPE credit. You can then click the certificate icon in the CPE Progress widget and download your CPE certificate. Don't worry, if you can't download your CPE certificate today, we'll email a copy to you in 2 weeks. If you're attending this webcast in a group, you must complete our group CPE attendance sheet to receive credit. The attendance sheet is available in our slide deck and handouts widget. Please have all group members sign it and send only 1 sheet per group. Also note that CPE credit only can be awarded to participants registered as themselves and isn't available for participants who view the on-demand version. As a reminder, the presentation you're about to see is not legal, investment, or accounting advice. We encourage you to seek the counsel of a professional service provider to apply this content to your specific circumstances.
Before we get started, I wanted to acknowledge our recent big news that Moss Adams is joining forces with Baker Tilly to create a new firm, one designed to serve the needs of the middle market. It's really exciting, and you can read more about it on our website from the link in the console. And now I'd like to introduce our moderator for today's panel, Megan Otto, Senior Manager here at Moss Adams. Her bio and contact information are located in your console if you would like more information. Now, I would like to turn the floor over to Megan to introduce today's panelists. Megan.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We have a great session today and some really excellent panelists that are here to share their experience about fundraising, development, and working with your board. So to start it off, we have Alex Edgar, who is a board member at Points of Light. And we also have Eric Cooper with us, board member of Feeding America. And then Vincent McNeely, corporate sponsor manager at the Gender Pool Project. Really excited to have them here today. They all bring a wealth of experience and really diverse perspectives. So without further ado, we're going to hop into it. So this series is happening every quarter of this year. We've already had 1 webinar so far on risk management for mission-driven boards. And today you're here for fundraising and development strategies for boards. Later in the year, we have a couple more webinars that we would love for you to attend about innovation with generative AI and then strategic planning for mission-driven boards. So just want to highlight those. Please attend if those interest you. Okay, and then into the panel discussion. But before we start that, we are going to start off with a quick poll for that CPE. And we'd like to, find out more about everyone who's here and ask the question of how engaged you feel your board is in fundraising activities. We have 4 different options, ranging from not engaged at all to very engaged. If you want to select one of those options, it'll be helpful in understanding you all as an audience, and we can kind of gear this conversation towards you. We're going to give it a few more minutes, more moments, just to make sure everyone is able to get that answer in. Okay, pretty mixed results across the board. Great to hear that we have a pretty diverse audience, and ranging from not engaged at all to very engaged, slightly engaged, moderately engaged. I think it'll be really beneficial to hear the insights from this group here. Okay, so first, to get started, I would love for each of the panelists to introduce themselves, tell us a little bit about your background and how you work with the board, just in general. Yeah, so I'm going to start it off with Alex.
Awesome. Well, it is such a pleasure to be here with all of you, and thank you, Megan and Moss Adams, for having me. My name is Alex Edgar, and I am a board member at Points of Light, which is kind of how I was brought into being here. And if you don't know Points of Light, we are a nonpartisan nonprofit dedicated to increasing volunteering in communities around the world. And we really do that through a mixture of nonprofit, corporate, and social impact work, where we galvanize over 3.8 million volunteers in 32 countries to meet community needs. And as a board member, I am Gen Z, and outside of being on the board of Points of Light, I work as youth engagement manager at Made by Us, a national nonprofit focused on bringing young people into museums and cultural institutions. And really, with that background and a lot of work I've done prior, I was brought in as the first Gen Z board member at Points of Light, and really focus on helping them not only do fundraising in a way that connects to our youth audience, but also really help change the narrative around young people and community service, and help get folks thinking about just the plethora of opportunities and also challenges that come with getting the next generation involved in volunteerism. And yeah, excited to be here.
Megan, I think you might be on mute.
Thank you, Alex. Yes, thank you, Alex. I'd love to pass it to Eric next.
Hey, thanks, Megan. I too join Alex in just extending the gratitude to be able to be on this panel with Alex and Vincent and Megan. Thank you for your facilitation. I have been privileged to be on the board of Feeding America. It's the nation's largest nonprofit organization and happens to be the largest hunger relief organization. I also have worked in the space of nonprofits for about 31 years, the CEO of the San Antonio Food Bank here in San Antonio, Texas for the last 25. So I'm going to blend a little bit of my having a board CEO role and then the work that I do as a board member, bringing that perspective of both, I hope will bring some insights into engaging a board into some fundraising. So thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Vincent, open the floor to you.
Thank you, Megan, Eric, and Alex. I'm grateful to be here with you as well. And I am excited to be joining as a corporate sponsor manager at the Gendercool Project, which is a nonprofit dedicated to replacing misinformed opinions of transgender and non-binary people with powerful, positive stories of transgender and non-binary people and their supportive families who are thriving. And I've worked in the nonprofit space for over a decade, working with the American Cancer Society, working with Gendercool, working with organizations when I was a senior software engineer at VMware as well, trying to engage in the nonprofit space and build tools and technology platforms to enable nonprofits to thrive in different ways. So I'm excited to share some of the things that we're doing at Gendercool and some of the things that I've done in my past work as well that might be able to help some folks here today.
Awesome, thank you. And if we have any newer board members or newer organizations, would love to hear from all of you on the panel about any advice that you have for board members that may not have experience in development and fundraising. I'll kick it to Vincent first, and then we can kind of go back around in reverse order.
Yeah, I'm just really excited to, be part of this discussion because I feel like we're in this very exciting time right now with a bunch of technology moving really quickly. And as someone who's worked in the tech space for a long time, I feel like there's tons of things that folks can use to enable their boards and their teams to do development and fundraising in newer, better, more efficient ways. There's a lot of technology platforms out there that we've been working to adopt internally at Gendercool that have helped us, shift with the times, because this is a challenging time specifically in the space of an LGBTQ plus nonprofit, but it's also a challenging time for nonprofits in general with, in the United States in particular, but also global ones like ours. A lot of organizations are moving really carefully and cautiously and engaging with us from the corporate side, where I work a lot to work with Fortune 500 and Fortune 1000 organizations to help enable their teams to be more communicative with the next generation workforce, which are these young people that are really moving into organizations now. As Gen Z is becoming a larger part of the workforce. That's really where we sit with Gendercool and trying to enable folks in the work world, to work with these young people that are so passionate and they're so diverse in their opinions and thoughts and identities. I'm gay and neurodivergent and Latino, have a Black boyfriend myself. And so I show up with all these identities in the workplace, and Gendercool works to help, these young people in the world. And we've been trying to find new ways to engage with corporations and engage in this work with stewarding donors in new ways. And this has meant up-leveling our team with AI competency. And so I've been working to share, how do you use ChatGPT, or how do you make automation scripts? How do you try to integrate social media in a way that's really resonating with your story as a nonprofit? And our story has been shared in USA Today. We've worked with Pixar for a series, most recently Win or Lose. We've also been part of trying to tell stories in traditional forms like newspapers and magazines, where we've been on the cover of The Advocate in the past 6 months. And these storytelling techniques are never going to go away, but you can amplify and micro-target in new ways now with these AI tools to reach different versions of your story and tailor it to different personas of who might be willing to work with your organization. And we're playing around with new things. I feel like in the tech world, things are changing every 3 weeks. I heard Sam Altman not share too long ago, the leader of OpenAI, that they don't even plan more than 3 weeks out for their roadmap now as a product, management strategy. And that's something that just kind of highlights the rapid pace of innovation. And I think it's coming more rapid than many organizations have adopted it, the large monoliths of the world. And I see a huge opportunity for nonprofits to up-level in this space and do more with less resources. And I know that that's something that a lot of folks, especially nonprofits, are thinking about, is how do we do more with less, and how do we reach the masses in a way that is timely and relevant. And there's just so many tools. You could use ChatGPT to just get started and ID'd around some other tools. I'm glad to share with y'all some links that might help too for some of the things that we're doing in different ways. But I'm glad to connect with folks. If you have more thoughts around that, please reach out to me and we can find ways to collaborate in some ways.
Thanks, Vincent. I think that's so interesting around the short-term planning and how I think that really is a reality for a lot of organizations right now in the nonprofit field.
For sure.
Eric, I'll pass it over to you.
Yeah, so I thought it was really interesting that the survey, 13% highly engaged in fundraising, and whether that was a board member responding or a nonprofit staff member responding, because oftentimes nonprofit staff always are pursuing a high-powered fundraising board and maybe feel that their board can totally improve, that they're not getting out of their board what they need. And sometimes a board might think, well, hey, we've got competent staff. They should be fundraising and we're just managing that. And the reality is that it's everyone's responsibility, and that the onboarding of a board member, I find that it's in the communication of expectations that there's a real opportunity. If you're hearing for the first time that your nonprofit needs you to fundraise, it's too late, right? If you feel like, I didn't sign up for this isn't what I want to do. There's no joy in fundraising. I just love the mission and love the work and want to direct it or be a part of the fiduciary aspects of the business. Your nonprofit needs you to engage. And so, I think there's two areas. One is in kind of individual giving, your board giving or what you do personal, and then the expectation of how you get, and that opportunity to do a little give-get might be in leveraging your business relationship, getting your employer to also support the nonprofit that you're a part of, or your social network, your friends, family members, etc. I think the best thing board members can do is lending their personal brand, really making it clear to all your circles of influence that you care about this nonprofit, that you advocate for them, that when they see you, that they can't help but think of the nonprofit that you're so passionate about. Like, I want my board members of the food bank, when they pull into their driveway, their neighbors, run to put away their canned goods, right? Because they know that neighbor's going to shake them down for some food, right? Because they care about the food bank. They're so passionate, man, they won't stop talking about it. That kind of energy, is really needed if you're going to obtain the fundraising needs of the organization. Now, I led with clarity of expectation. You can now overlay some goals, specific targets and activities related to that. For example, we have opportunities to engage our board in events, in-home activities where they might invite neighbors and friends to a gathering at their house to learn a little bit about the food bank. They might be engaged in acknowledgments, right? Helping us thank donors that have previously given, and helping in the follow-up and stewardship of that relationship. But those are just a few more ways. Look forward to answering some more questions, but clear expectations is where it all starts.
I love that. I love the idea of the energy being contagious and, kind of building your brand, and naturally that may lead into engagement and fundraising. So, Alex,
Wow.
do you want to wrap us up on this one?
100%. And as a new and young board member myself, I feel like this one like hit close to home for me. And I also just like want to plus one what Eric was sharing about the connection to the mission and clarity of communication for new board members, as well as Vincent's point about like taking advantage of new tech. I think kind of balancing the desire to try what's new, but also like sometimes you got to wait and see where things go. But I will say from my experience as a new board member myself, I think some of the most important things that I've seen is just the power of having a newer voice in spaces that might not always have had that type of representation. So I've got to give major props to Points of Light for welcoming their first Gen Z board member. And I think I really like it, encourage other organizations to think through what are those other kind of pools of talent that can be brought into the board space that, obviously having, people involved in corporate spaces that might be able to get their corporations, as Eric mentioned, to tap in. But what is the role in really narrative and storytelling development and the ability to expand the platform of the organization by expanding kind of the pool of folks who can be tapped in at the board level. And I think that's something that I really see as in this period of kind of fluxing for so many nonprofits, that being able to have board members who not only are there and passionate and care about the mission, but are on social media and can really actively engage with audiences that might be, a lot larger and more vibrant, given their connections there. As well as just really, being able to build those relationships with younger donors. I think that's one space that we see there's going to be a huge, like, generational transfer of wealth between baby boomers and their children over the next decade or so. And the impact that's going to have on fundraising in the nonprofit space is critical. So I'd really recommend folks to think about how are we building up pipelines for more diverse boards, whether that's age diversity or racial background, et cetera, and really all of the possibilities that come with having folks that might not fit the traditional cookie cutter expectation of a board member, but might be able to really expand and deepen the work your organization is doing and help it reach just kind of new heights and new audiences.
Super interesting. I think that really highlights the importance of diversity on boards and getting to reach wider audiences with that diversity. So we are going to hop over to our next poll question. I just want to remind everyone there is a Q&A option on your screen. If you'd like to input any questions, we will have about 10 minutes at the end to answer any questions. So if any come up as we're going through these questions and talking with the panelists, please feel free to drop them in there. For this poll, we would love to know what type of training or resources would be most beneficial for your board members to improve their fundraising skills. So ranging from storytelling techniques, donor relationship management, data analysis and metrics tracking, and networking and outreach strategies. Give this about another 10 seconds, and then we'll close the poll. Okay, another split result. Sounds like there are lots of different ways that boards could be supported. I see networking and outreach strategies being the highest, but overall pretty equal. Which is very fitting. The next topic that we're going to talk about is fundraising development and skills. So I would love to hear from Eric about how organizations can provide ongoing support to board members.
Yeah, so I want to put on my CEO hat for a minute and just how I interact with the board. It's starting in that beginning, right? We've headhunted for specific board members that we think would add value and impact to the board. We've recruited them. We've given them a solid orientation, and in that orientation, a job description, and then a scorecard. The scorecard outlines their goals and objectives and expectations, specifically in our development, which includes food through food donations, time through volunteerism, dollars through monetary donations. Again, that could be a give or a get, and then voice. A voice for us includes leveraging their social media. It's the advocacy work around public policy, and in their faith tradition, prayer. So we want to get all four elements of those food, time, money, voice from each one of our board members. And so I think to be able to give ready to go kind of toolkits, that could be leveraged in a quick and convenient way. It could be, the content of a text message with a link to a giving page. It could be an email that just needs the name of the person, and sent. We want to make sure that as staff, we're creating the content, and then it's the board member that then is leveraging their network, their influence, their relationships. It's interesting in the poll questions, when you think about what trended the highest around networking, I think we're all looking to leverage our relationships. And so, I think nonprofits are recruiting board members trying to get into their relationships. And it sounds like then board members are like, hey, how can I increase my relationship so that can be more beneficial? And I think those are, oftentimes done in, event strategy or actual engagement on-site experiences. So again, a good example of that might be just through volunteering. We're super fortunate. We receive about 2,000 to 3,000 individual volunteers each week here at the food bank. When our board comes out and volunteers, quickly they're put into a group of other volunteers that are like-minded. They care about hunger. They want to alleviate that. They might be working in a kitchen making meals, or on a garden or farm harvesting vegetables. They might be in a warehouse packing a box, or on the front lines actually distributing food. And when that board member can talk to that volunteer and introduce themselves as being on the board, they start to build that relationship, and they network and they connect and they inspire that volunteer to engage in, again, another way. And that could be making a monetary gift, or it could be maybe leveraging that volunteers network to host a food drive or do some other activity that could benefit. And so having those quick hit, cliff notes, the quick leave behind, the talking points, I think that's how we can strengthen our board. And then for us board members to know that content, to have it readily available, so we can leverage those networks and have some impact.
Awesome. Thank you, Eric. Alex, I would love to hear from you as a newer board member. What has been especially helpful for you to gain those skills and improve those skills around fundraising?
Definitely. And I think, what Eric just mentioned about having a lot of that kind of easy access, cookie cutter information of saying, like, here's what you can use to share with your network, I think has been really helpful. But I think, even like one step further than that, I think one of the most helpful things is I've been approaching, being new to being on a board is them really giving me the opportunity to bring my own personal narrative to how I talk to folks about the work we're doing. And I think that's one thing that like every board member should be taking as best advantage of as possible, as well as every board should really be looking for how can we best talk about the work we're doing in context of our lives. And I think especially when we're talking about volunteer service and in the way that community service is kind of looked at differently across generations, I think it's important being able to, be in a position to talk about, being an Eagle Scout, but also being a community organizer, and the way that those kind of different realities of community service intersect in the way that we approach volunteer service at this very high level. So I say that's one thing, like the ability to really tell strong narratives and to be put out in different platforms and capacities as a representative of Point of Light and an ambassador of the work we do, I think is really important, especially as we try to recontextualize what volunteer service can look like for a generation that's increasingly online and less likely to attend a lot of these traditional community service pathways. And I think the second thing that's been really helpful as a board member, kind of getting introduced to fundraising, was one of the first things I did after joining the board was having a meeting with the fundraising team and just hearing a bit about what is their kind of go-to spiel when they're talking to people, and what would be the best way for me, coming from the background I do, to support in the work that they're already doing, right? Like, every fundraising team, no matter what size, they definitely have some big strategic plan around, how are we going to reach these certain quotas. And I think as a new board member, that was really helpful to understand, like, okay, this is where my expertise around, engaging a younger audience could be helpful to their work, and also where their deep understanding of what, kind of fundraising terminology and strategy could be best brought into the work I'm doing, especially as I start, having these in-person meetings with potential funders and being able to bridge both the narrative approach and the real, detailed points of light approach to the work we're doing. So I think that's been really important. And then I think in general, one thing I've seen that has worked really well on this board, definitely in comparison to some other groups I've worked with in the past, is that because there is such a common passion for the mission, everyone on the board, when we are showing up together, we are showing up. These, are obviously all folks from, very busy, important backgrounds, and the ability to come together and really have that community centeredness within the board has been really helpful as we've been able to rely on one another as we've approached different fundraising opportunities and narrative opportunities. I think the better we can, build that community within a board space is also incredibly impactful.
Thank you. Vincent, I would love to hear your perspective about how technology has been incorporated into fundraising and what type of tools that your board is using.
Yeah, I think Alex and Eric touched on some really important things with enabling the board to have information. And there's a phrase that I keep hearing thrown around in different ways, but I'm going to say it in two ways because I think it'll resonate well with a lot of folks, is that logic leads, emotion moves, and giving follows. Or another way to say that is data opens minds, stories opens hearts, and by proxy wallets. And so as you're trying to fundraise, enabling the board with data and being able to tell your story in a way that can open people's ears initially if they might be not receptive to giving or the impact work that your organization is doing. Gendercool itself isn't a direct service organization. We're a storytelling campaign at the end of the day. And so our stories really matter a lot in honing in on how you can craft your story. Alex, you shared meeting with the fundraising team. That's essentially what my team does. And I work with the board to find ways I can share information with them in new ways, like the latest data that we have, the insights around who we've impacted, and how that impact has resonated through stories of people in our community on social media or in other formats that the board may not be looking at regularly, so that the board has ammunition and can go to the world and their networks to share that information in new ways. I think that this is like a social media generation that we're in right now. We were like in an app phase from a technology perspective for quite a while. We moved to social media. It's becoming more personalized with artificial intelligence now, and these tools are getting more personal. You can use that to help you craft your story. You can use it to find outlets to share your story in new ways. We encourage our board to share stuff on our social platforms because the stories are compact and you can add on top of the stories that are already being communicated out to our broader audience, and resharing that information can reach your tertiary networks in ways that just hasn't been possible before. It used to be like you go on a flight and you go to a conference and you might get on a stage and speak, and maybe you mention the nonprofit in your storytelling pitch of who you are and how you integrate into this work as a board member. But now you can reach so many people every week if you just reshare the content on LinkedIn, or if you just repost stories on Instagram, or if you happen to have a brand of your own and are super, modern and have other platforms for doing more direct storytelling with audiences, leveraging these types of tools, your story can just reach so many millions of people. And because of your credibility as a leader, you can open up people's hearts and their wallets probably a lot more than folks on the fundraising team may be able to reach. And that's really like the impact that a board can drive for their organization, that we can constantly try to find ways for our board members to lean into hosting salon events for us, or trying to drive attendees to our fundraising events. And we've been doing a lot of virtual events that are cross company and trying to get more companies involved in being part of our events. One, because there's some sense of safety in numbers now in my space in particular, and also trying to, drive this networking to a level that really builds community, because that's ultimately what Gender Cool is about, is building community around our mission. And we're able to do that by reaching greater networks with people that resonate with our mission with a heartfelt story. And so I think crafting a narrative yourself is really, really important nowadays, and finding out how you attach to the mission for the organization or your cause is really, really critical.
Thank you. I think we'll cover this question in the next section, but I would love to hear about how you transfer your engagement on LinkedIn, or your shares and your posts on LinkedIn, and how you're tracking the giving that's associated with what you're posting. But with that, we will hop to another poll, and then we'll go into metrics and evaluation. All right, is it? All right, it's not pushing through. Danielle, would you mind pushing through the poll question? Oh, it is. Okay. Perfect. All right, so which metric do you believe is the most important for measuring the effectiveness of your board's fundraising efforts? So total funds raised, number of new donors, board member participation in fundraising activities, or donor retention rate? Curious what you all find to be the most beneficial stat. Okay, I think we kind of have a semi-landslide. Total funds raised seems to be the most important one. And then looking at donor retention rate, let's see, new board members acquired, and then board member participation in fundraising activities, interestingly enough. So it sounds like the bottom line is total funds raised, and then retaining those donors to ensure that you have steady rates of fundraising. All right, and then metrics and evaluation. Vincent, I will start it off with you. I would love to hear how social media posts kind of translate into the metrics that you all are tracking, and how you are determining that ROI.
Yeah, when someone follows us or likes a post, it increases our reach immediately, and that's something that really algorithmically is built into these platforms. But it offers us an opportunity to connect long term in communicating our mission to people, and so we try to measure things in a way that I think a lot of people kind of get if they watch YouTube, for example, is like a subscribe or a follow is really valuable. And that's why everyone is always saying at the beginning of their YouTube videos, it's like subscribe, 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 because that has a really high return rate because you're just getting constant contact with people in a way that you've used constant contact to email people for years. Now social media is a new mechanism for that. But if I was doing some analysis on our website recently and seeing that a high number of leads are being generated for nonprofits now through ChatGPT, for example, and other AI tools. And when people are looking to figure out how do they ideate around, what do they do for Pride Month, for example, sometimes recommendations are being given out by these tools. And communicating to people on social platforms, on a public social platform, can increase the opportunities for your search results to be boosted in tools like these AI platforms or in Google. And so there's a return there on investment for investing in storytelling on social media, is that your reach is obviously broader and you can get direct leads to which turns into donations as well. But there's also a benefit in reaching people through social platforms just because it is an opportunity to really engage in an authentic way, and authenticity sells, I think. And so we try to tell authentic stories. The real ambassadors for our mission and for Gendercool are these young people. We have 24 of them. They're our champions, and they're aged 13 to a little over 18 in some senses. And they are just these young people that are all transgender, non-binary, but that's really the least exciting thing about them. They're actors and writers and authors and storytellers, and they all have their own way of communicating the story to the world that we try to highlight on our social platforms. And that resonates with young people that use these platforms, Gen Alpha, Gen Z, millennials, even Gen X and boomers, use some content on each of these platforms, and understanding who the audience is on each platform is really important. So we look at that, like on Facebook, it's not going to be the same message we're putting on TikTok, and it's not going to be the same thing we're putting on Instagram. And then some platforms we don't even use because they don't align with our mission really well. But that's okay. Finding the platforms that work for you to communicate your story is what's important. Understanding what micro segments and micro audience moments you can create by leveraging the different tools of the platform and having someone on your team that knows that really well. That, an Instagram story is different than an Instagram post. It's different than an Instagram reel or a LinkedIn moment, or doing LinkedIn Live or doing Instagram Live. And we're trying to engage with large corporations to do this too, because then you can have a multitude effect of doing an Instagram live stream with a large corporation, which reaches a whole new audience, or thinking about LinkedIn as a corporate outreach strategy, because a lot of people use that as for business senses. And depending on the types of fundraising that you're trying to engage in, or depending on the type of storytelling you're trying to do for any given moment, you can really appeal to an audience through these platforms in a way that resonates. So we do weekly readouts of our social media engagement and what stories are working for us. And the whole team comes to know of this so that they can leverage this type of storytelling on their own platforms too, and build stories that are similar to the ones that our social media manager is doing. So everyone on the team gets empowered with this knowledge and wisdom and goes out into the world and has impact based on that. So we try to share that back with the board too in regular readouts, and also with champions and their families, and engage them directly in building these stories and crafting the narratives for our organization. And I think that organizations of the future are going to be doing this more and more as they create these micro moments to highlight a moment of impact. And we also do impact instances on our team. So our whole team reads out what's impacting in their realm of the world and how someone was touched by our mission and our story. And that way all of us come more empowered to share that with other folks on the team and with the board so that they can share their own impact instances, and maybe it resonates in a way that didn't connect before.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that perspective. I am going to go ahead and hop to the next poll. Our final topic is around trends in fundraising. And I'm sure, as you all know, the nonprofit landscape has changed significantly over the last 6 months. So I would love to hear perspectives on that. So this poll, what do you perceive as the biggest barrier to board engagement in fundraising? Would you consider it the lack of time, insufficient training or resources, and then limited understanding of fundraising processes? We're going to give it a few more moments. We're almost there. Okay. Lack of time. Can definitely relate as a former nonprofit employee wearing many different hats. Time is very limited, and also as a board member as well. And then limited understanding of the fundraising process itself, which I think also ties in potentially to the insufficient training or resources possibly. I think those may go hand in hand at times. All right, so trends and engagement. The nonprofit landscape has changed significantly over the last 6 months. So I am curious to hear from all of you how that has changed your board's perspective related to fundraising, if it has changed it. And I will, Alex, do you want to start off?
For sure. Yeah, I mean, I'd say one thing to start off is that I think everyone in this moment is trying to recalibrate, reconfigure, and think through what does the next step looks like. And I love Vincent's point earlier of Sam Altman saying we don't even think past 3 weeks, because by the time you get there, everything's changed. And I'm sure a lot of folks on this call can relate to that mentality. And I'd say kind of from our perspective, a lot of it is trying to understand our role amidst the volunteer sector. As I'm sure a lot of you are experiencing, there were a ton of AmeriCorps programs being cut, federal grants being cut to these nonprofits that are doing the community service across the country. So I think amidst all of those changes, we see the need for folks to really come together around the importance of service. And I think that is really connected to a little bit what I touched on before about the importance of narrative. We've seen that people really rallied behind, like, what are the stories of these volunteers in these communities and how the changes are impacting them, and why this moment is the moment where we need to rally around service as like the future of our country. So I think that's a message that's been like really, really effective at getting people to see like there may not be the infrastructure a year or two from now to support the type of work that we want to be doing, here in the US, but also abroad. So I think that's one thing. And I think having that narrative ability of saying like, here is a young person, an older person, whatever it may be, who's doing good work can really help the mission. I know at Points of Light, we, for decades, have been doing these daily Points of Light awards. So every day we recognize a person doing important work in their communities. We have over 8,000 of them that we've awarded. And that's one thing that we really take advantage of, say, beyond just board members, how can we share these, really local community-based stories in a way that make it feel, you're not just donating to some organization that has a mile-high view of what's going on in the world, right? I think we're in a period of a lot of mistrust with institutions. especially amongst younger people who haven't experienced a lot of institutions working. So being able to show, like, not just we have the mission, we have the people who are on the right path, but also like, here are the direct stories of people that you'll be, really able to benefit and help out. I think has been really, really effective, especially in this time.
Thank you. I'm hearing the importance of storytelling and empowering your board members to be able to tell the narrative of the organization and the communities that your organization is impacting. Eric, do you wanna hop in on this one?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously there's a lot of change happening in the public sector, and that's having a trickle-down effect and impacting nonprofits. And when we think of resource restrictions, it's easy to get into the defensive stance. I think the opportunity is try to think offensively, try to think about, in this time of disruption, where is there a new strategy, the birthplace of invention, right? Like, just try to innovate. And I think, the concept of philanthropy it's not sales as much as coaching. The opportunity that you have to help your, relationships, people live in their finest hour, and be the person they want to be, that engagement into your cause or your issue, or the organization that you're serving with, you're trying to inspire people to be their best and to help relieve or assist in the organization that you're a part of. And I think sometimes we think of it more in that sales mentality and trying to just acquire a donor and extract some money out of them. But I think it is truly trying to help them be at their best. It's cool to be on here with Alex because, I think that space of service, it's so transformative, right? Like, Volunteers of America, Points of Light, you guys just deliver when it comes to what's good for that person is now impacting, the cause or issue. And so I think, that trend of making it more about the donor and their narrative is a powerful trend. This environment, a crisis is a terrible thing to waste, right? Don't ask for the nebulous. Don't, hey, we need you to give a gift so we can solve hunger. Get it really specific that there is a truckload of produce in a field on a farm that's going to go to waste. And for $1,200, you can help us rescue that crop and get it onto the tables of low-income kids in a community in a food desert that lack access to healthy produce, right? Get real granular in that direct impact and how that person being selfless and sharing, they become the hero in this story. And the more you can then give them a brag, a shareable, a post, a photo, an image, a video clip, a reel that helps them show how they helped rescue this food and they helped feed kids and they inspired their network, it just starts to explode from there. So.
Great. I love that perspective of not only storytelling, directed at what your organization is doing, but personalizing that to the potential donor. I love that tip. Vincent, I would love to hear from you and how corporate sponsorship has potentially changed over the last few months and how you all have pivoted.
Yeah, I'll add one anecdote to what Eric and Alex shared, which you also shared, Megan, which is there's just a lot of negative news, and nonprofits have an opportunity to fill this gap with positive, powerful stories. It's actually part of our mission at GenderCool, and I just think it's a huge opportunity right now to share these impact instances with people. From a corporate lens, corporations are kind of nervous and there's a lot of trepidation with the tariff crisis, with engagement in different ways. A lot of this work gets bucketed into the work of DEIB. And unfortunately, that's under attack in the US right now because there's limited time and effort and energy to organize and co-organize this work from a corporate lens. Sometimes it makes it really hard to engage with nonprofits because there's an embargo on it. And so making it safer and easier for corporates, people to engage in your work is really, really helpful. Also leveraging like these opportunities to connect with people in the nonprofit space around your heritage months. Like if you have a month for Asian Pacific Islanders or folks in the Black community or the Pride community, and you can connect with nonprofits during those months of giving where it's traditional for organizations to double or triple their matches for nonprofits. That's one way that y'all at Moss Adams have helped us raise tons of money in different instances for the work that we do. And I think a lot of corporations do this. There's also programs that folks sometimes I feel underutilized, where if you do a certain number of volunteer hours, you get a corporate grant that can be given to an organization of your choice. And sometimes this is done with a team or on an individual level. So that's one way that you can leverage corporate dollars to give back to organizations you care about. There's also opportunities in many cases to try to share tools or resources that are in kind, not just money, but share your wisdom with nonprofits that can use that expertise, and connecting to organizations that have expertise that could help you with just a simple message saying, we really could use your expertise in marketing or website design or internal, development. If this is an organization that's well connected in the world, this could really help you propel your mission forward just by finding one person at org that cares a little bit about your mission, that can give back a few hours a week to help your team up level or upskill or coach you. And then the last thing I'll share about how the world is changing is, yes, it's bad in the US, but it's not bad everywhere. And corporations are deeply entrenched around the world. I heard not long ago from DHL at a conference I went to. They're in 220 countries they operate in. And you can imagine that with a footprint that large, you can reach people that might benefit from your organization or might give that you've never reached before because that organization is deeply entrenched. So pairing that partnership with a corporate entity that is so deeply broad, you could reach, teams that are engaged around the world, and also, leaders in a lot of cases might want to executive sponsor your organization and give you money directly from their resource pool, and it not come from a DEI budget, for example, or from a philanthropic budget, but come from an individual leader that has a budget and cost center that they can give from. So we're thinking about this in different ways at GenderCool, but also in lots of nonprofits are thinking about this work differently. And I think there's just a huge opportunity to really pair up with corporate America, the corporate America that wants to do something and have impact in this moment, which I think most do, because communities are both a community for the corporation to go to market, but also to have impact in a local level. And being able to share that story with corporate America that you've had impact and they had impact too, like Eric was sharing, I think is really important.
Great, thank you. It's really interesting to hear that perspective, and I'm sure for a lot of organizations that haven't traditionally, reached out to corporations for donations and for fundraising, but are having to make that change due to the cut in federal funding and just general grant funding. So thank you for being here, Vincent, and sharing that perspective. I think it's very valuable. And I believe we've answered actually the majority of the questions with y'all's answers. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go to the questions slide. If there are any questions that you all have, please feel free to drop me an email. My email is mega.otto@mossadams.com. Would love to connect you with anyone on this panel or answer any of your questions directly. With that, I will pass it back over to Danielle.
A big thank you to Megan and all of our panelists for a great discussion today. To our audience, if you have any further questions or comments, please reach out to us as we would be happy to continue the conversation. You can drop a note in the Q&A window or reach out to our moderator directly. Her contact information is in the console. If we didn't have time to answer your question during the presentation, we will do our best to follow up with you after the webcast. Also, I would like to draw attention to the image in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. Click this to be taken to more information on our board governance series. And be sure to register for the next webcast, Not-for-Profit Boards, Drive Innovation with Generative AI, which will be August 27th. Hopefully you can join us for that one as well. If you met all CPE requirements, your certificate is available to download now in the CPE progress window. A copy will be emailed within 3 weeks should you have any trouble downloading it now. Finally, here's a link to an online survey for today's presentation. Thank you for joining our webcast. We hope you'll join us again next time.